Hey everyone, welcome to the other side of addiction live. Even though I hit the live and it wasn't working out so good, apologize, but by golly, we will get this show up on social media. We've got a great guest with us today. Gentleman's name is Josh. Josh, how you doing today, buddy?
Hey, not bad, Al. Really good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for taking time out of your evening to be here. You know, Josh and I was talking a little bit before the show, and even in his bio, we were talking about my story matters. And I think a lot of our guests have actually heard me talk about that many times on the show. Our voice and our story does matter. And the reason why is because someone who may be in the depths of their addiction right now, someone who's really struggling and don't know which direction to go, you never know what you're going to hear on this show, right? And Josh may share something with us, which I know he is going to share something with us that helped him during his journey. And that may connect with someone out there. So again, Josh, thanks, buddy, so much for being here.
It's a real pleasure. Appreciate the opportunity.
You bet. So you are actually now, aren't you like a director of justice or something? If I understood your bio right?
Yeah. So my story matters is it's a long story actually. It was originally founded by a woman named Amy Chandler, who is a dear friend of mine, back in 2010, and it started as it really started as a labor of love, which these things often do, right? And she had some principles and had dug into some behavioral elements that she found really served human beings, and she felt this call to take these principles and to create a curriculum or at least a pathway out of them to help individuals in less than privileged situations. And so her initiation with My Story Matters after she built this nonprofit was to take these principles into homeless shelters and refugee camps. And her love was for these children that she saw in these areas who it was evident in their eyes didn't feel like they had a story that mattered. And the principles that she used are identity empowerment principles. And she took them in. She started working with people, and she saw a massive amount of success. And she jumped in with school districts in Salt Lake County, and worked with the Road Home and the YMCA and Youth Justice Center, and just started really getting these really tangible and actionable principles into the hands of people that could use them. And in the process of doing that, I mean, things snowball. Good. I feel like good snowballs, and when people are sharing goodness, people who are looking for it gravitate toward it, and it's like there's this energy that comes from it, and that's what it was with My Story Matters. And we could dig into the nuts and bolts of what each one of those operations look like, but the reality was that the snowball eventually led into the justice involved community. She, again, just like she felt the call to take it into homeless shelters, she felt this call to take it into the prison system. And oddly enough, she didn't know anybody in the prison system. She never had met anybody who'd been incarcerated. She didn't know any families of people who had been incarcerated, but she felt like there was a population that needed to have these tools. And this was in 2020. And as she dove in, she received the call and dove in and started talking to people and just dialing phone numbers. Who do I talk to? How do I? And she started interviewing people who either knew somebody who'd been incarcerated or individuals that had been incarcerated themselves. And I was one of those people. And so this was in 2020. And as she started laying out these principles to me, there was something that resonated. And just kind of continue on. There's multiple facets that I could dive into from right there, and I'm sure that we will. But just to kind of flesh out the storyline of My Story Matters, we started working together. I felt an instant connection to what she was talking about because of my own history, and she invited me to go on this journey with her, and it became my labor of love. And it's been a volunteer journey for me from the beginning. We took this My Story Matters curriculum, and we sat and we basically stripped all of the anecdote and all of the storyline that worked for homeless shelters and that worked for refugee camps and that worked for youth in custody. And we started putting flesh and anecdote on these principles that worked for the incarcerated community, for individuals who had been justice involved, right? And we retitled the thing. We called it Safe Harbors. And so Safe Harbors started there at the end of 2020. We started taking it into facilities, in lockdown facilities in 2021. And we've just been rolling with it ever since then. I took over a director, quote unquote, position just because of my love for the incarcerated community. And when I say that, I speak about the incarcerated community very broadly because I feel like that word has resonance with each and every human being. I feel like there's an incarcerated individual inside each of us. And that as we learn to apply principles of identity empowerment to our lives, we can find the door to the prison that we often find ourselves in. So I took on that role, and it has been a freaking journey that I just fall in love with every day, a little bit more because it's challenging, because it's hard, because I get to meet some of the most amazing people, because I get to meet some of the most obstinate and for lack of a better word, stupid people, and it's just great. So anyway, that the My Story Matters journey in a 2-minute spread, that's what it is. What our objective is to share the power of creating vision for future, and then being able to actualize the steps that it takes to make that vision become a reality.
I love this so much, Josh. We just did a Healing Utah Success Summit in Sandy this past Saturday, and a couple of us speakers, myself, our friend Mallory Roosh out of St. George, we spoke about our past with addiction, and she was actually on her way to be sentenced to prison for, I don't know, 22 years or something like that, dude. And this was at age of 19, right? Very, very young. And the producer and the owner of Resilience Talk Network, who is usually doing the show with me, he shared some 10 key principles to help you on your journey, and it's all about empowerment. And you touched base on it about all of us being in prison or having something imprisoned inside of us, right?
Yeah.
These principles that you're talking about are just not for those who have a background or who are in trouble or who are struggling with things, because I guess they can be for struggling, because we're all struggling with things, right? There's every single one of us out there have got something that we're struggling with. And I think from what I'm understanding with My Story Matters, these principles can help everyone every day in their life and help them grow, correct?
Yeah. The interesting thing was, as we started to take the My Story Matters principles and put this flesh that allowed individuals who were justice involved to be able to feel the power of them, we took it into the lockdown facilities and presented it, and the people were like, oh my gosh, and they started to receive it, and they started to feel motivation and see the vision of the future, and start mapping out those steps, and they're like, I want my family to have this. My wife needs to have it. My husband needs to have this. My kids need to have this. And it's been uh, uh, kind of like a process of epiphany after epiphany, right? Like we go in and we think that the end game is to take this to the incarcerated community. And then the incarcerated community teaches us that there's another community. And it's the community that is their families and is their friends. And as we take it to their families and friends tell us about their sister or their brother or their so and so that has nothing to do with the incarcerated community. They need this. They could benefit from being able to strip labels off of themselves and empower themselves with new words that are attached to vision. And we're like, yeah, they do need that. And so we started to put this flesh on for all of these different communities. And what we ended up with is a multi-track nonprofit that provides curriculum for the community, that provides curriculum for youth, that provides curriculum for education. So we have a K through 12 model. We have a teen model. We've just been through a professional model, which has certified us with therapists. And so we are a continuing education model for therapists who are looking to continue maintaining their license. To your point, Al, everybody can benefit from introspection. Everybody can benefit from taking their past, whether it comes with a prison jacket or it comes with addiction attached to it, or whatever it comes with. Our past gives us a opportunity to learn what labels we've taken on as individuals, and to ask ourselves if they're valid for our future. And if they're not, hey, I don't need to keep them, right? Like I don't need to own my prison number 179947. That doesn't have to be who I am. It doesn't have to rule my resume. It doesn't have to be a part of the future unless I feel like it's important for that, right? But it doesn't have to be this damning structure that doesn't allow me to do my 40s in the best way possible, right? Like life isn't over, life is just beginning. And I think that is ultimately the message, that we're continuing to learn there are more communities that need, right? Like every community needs to have this. And we're in this mode of the demand is greater than our ability to supply at this point. We're this like skeleton crew that is trying to service all of these communities. And it is definitely a labor, and it's one that I love for sure.
You said a couple key things here, Josh. You were talking about the labels that we put on ourselves. How many of us out there are actually suffering because somebody has actually placed a label on us and we've accepted it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen that happen so much through all the interviews I've done with those who have battled with addiction. And it's all kinds of addiction, right? We interviewed a guy out of Houston who had a gambling addiction, and he had that label put on him, and he accepted it because that's who he thought he really was, not realizing he was someone different. My wife was the same way, right? I mean, my wife, she had quite a few labels placed on her as a young woman, and she took that into her adulthood. I did the same. I had labels put on me as a young man that I took into my adulthood, not even realizing I was carrying that freaking baggage with me, not even knowing, but it was there and I was acting on it, not realizing why I was acting on it. So, yeah, I mean, to have the skeleton crew that you guys are doing and wanting to get a message out there, it's the same thing what we're doing here on the other side of addiction. We've got this message and these stories. That's why I like My Story Matters, because our voices freaking matter. And too many people want to plug their ears or not say anything. And it's about flipping time we do. They need to know. And they need to know how incredible they are and how beautiful they are as individuals, and stop listening to that outside noise that is putting those labels on them, because if someone places a label on us, at least it was for me in my younger years, I'd take that label and I'd expand it, right? Well, if this is what I am, then I must also be this. Oh, and then I must also be this. And I just keep making that label larger and larger. So I love what you guys are doing. And I really, really hope here in the near future that somehow, some way, I don't know if there's something we can even do on our end to help you guys get out there. And that's what I love doing about these podcasts. And I so wish we had a studio so we could do this. And apparently we are doing live because it's showing up here on the screen. We are live on Facebook.
Great.
You know, it's just needing to get this message out there, right? There's so many people
Yeah.
that need to hear this. And I think just what little you have shared with us, this needs to get in schools, right? How many kids are suffering right now? I mean, starting at an early age, you know, even like in junior high.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a story that starts before prison, right? And it starts before self-destruction, it starts before suicide, it starts before, all of these things that we're looking at and we're going, oh my gosh, like where could I have done better? And the story goes back, and it goes back to the way that we're mentoring the rising generation. And that was one of the epiphany shifts that we had, right? As we took it into families, and the families started introducing us to their kids. And these are the brothers and sisters of those who are incarcerated, who look up to their brother and sister who is incarcerated. And we see that they don't have tools. And, regardless of what their home life and their situation is, the tools are tools that allow us to blossom and grow as individuals, right? And to recognize our environment as being sometimes the stressful opportunity that the body and the mind need in order to become resilient and to become strong. And so, we have initiated in the teen community and in K through 12 and in the schools, and it's a grassroots thing, but it's getting traction, it's getting visibility, and we're really excited about it. There was something that you said that made me think about when we were talking about labels, and we were talking about you passionately spoke about individuals needing to not listen to the voice, right, of all of these people pointing fingers and giving labels and those kind of things. And what came to my mind is something that came to my mind and came to my heart when I made the decision to brush the labels off, right? And that is that permission to do that starts with me. It starts with each individual. That nobody can tell me what I can and can't do, who I am and who I am not. But the second that I agree with them, I'm not giving myself permission to change that. Like, the change has to start with me. It can't start by saying you need to. It's I need to. And I need to see myself as more. I need to start applying principles to my life that allow me to see myself as more. Because to your point, you said that you took on a label and you started acting and building on that label, and you didn't even know you were doing it. And that's what we do. And part of the Safe Harbors curriculum teaches us that that's exactly what we do. And that's how our brains are programmed and wired from the time we're just little. And once we can become aware of that process of identity development, we have a superpower. Because when I know how it works, then I know how to work it, right? So when I know that it's the observation of others that initiates action, and that action that I take on attached to what they see in me leads to a belief system, and then that belief system leads to a vision of what I see myself as in the future, and what I see myself as right now, and that vision establish itself in my brain and in my body as my knowledge, oh my gosh, if I know that, I can reverse the system. And I start with vision. What do I want to be? Who do I see myself as? And if I can envision that, and we talk about encoding a ton, which means that you got to write it down. You can't just think it in your head. You got to put it on paper, because there's something that happens. We could get into the science about it, but trust me, so we don't have to get into the weeds of the science, that when you pick up that pen and you start to write it, your brain flips a switch that brings it into the present tense. Everything that you write has the ability to be manifest in your reality, because your brain's not thinking in the past, it's not thinking in the future, it is thinking right now. I'm doing it now, right? And so as you do that and create this vision, it leads to a belief. When I first did this activity, and I would love, can I share a story?
Yes, yeah, please
Or-
do. Please do.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to just illustrate this, the rest of this repatterning of this theory of identity. And I learned this retrospectively, but this happened for me when I was in prison. And I'd been incarcerated for 6 months waiting to see the Board of Pardons. Didn't know how long I was going to be there. I'd been sent up on 2 1-to-15s. And it was my first time in prison, but I'd done the previous 8 years in and out of incarceration, and at the county level. I did a really short 6-month bit up in the Idaho State Prison. I did what they call a rider program, which is like a boot camp program. So I'd been like in and out of the system, but I'd never done a stay in a state facility like that. I'd never been put in the general population. And so my thought was, okay, it's a 1-to-15. It's my first time in prison. They're drug-related crimes. They're going to give me like one of these 1-year programs. Upon completion, they'll kick me out. They'll give me a probation, or they'll give me a parole. And that was my thought. And I went and I saw the board, and they didn't even let me speak. And they told me, you got 42 months. And I was like, 42 months. Oh my gosh. That's 3.5 years. And and my heart just like dropped into my guts. I've got a 5-year-old daughter at home, and I start thinking about her life, and I'm like, oh my goodness, she's going to be almost 9 by the time I get out of here. And like, this is running through my head, and I'm just sick about it. And I go back to my cell, and I was lucky enough at the time to have a single cell. I didn't have a cellmate. And as the doors shut that night, and I was sitting there, I just started bawling my eyes out. I just felt like life was like I was done, right? Like I couldn't see beyond the day, let alone beyond 42 months. And I was sitting there on my bunk, and I pulled out my property box. And for those listeners who don't know what that is, I mean, everything that your life has kind of become is in that box, right? Like, you get everything taken from you, and they give you some state property. So I've got like state issued clothes and some state issued toothpaste and stuff like that, and some stationery. And I pull out that box, and I just started thinking about my life, and I'm like, all these things that I've lost. I lost a home, I lost a wife, I lost a good job. Like, I lost all of these things, and this is what my life is. And now I've got 42 months in this crap hole that I've got to do, and it's going to destroy me, because the last 6 months almost have, right? Like, I'm just trying to get through the days. And in that moment, something happened to me in that moment. And call it whatever you want. It was like the universe coming together and like slapped me in the face and said, Josh, look again. And so I looked again, and I saw a blank piece of paper, and I saw a pen. And I picked up those 2 things, and those 2 things became my savior, because I wrote down this line. And it was an activity, and it's an activity, I still do it to this day. I wrote down the word vision at the top of that page. And then I wrote the words, if you could do anything with your life, what would you do? And I just started to talk. I just started to like spit this stuff onto this page. If you could do anything with your life, what would you do? What would you be? And that became a narrative. It was a soul narrative, Al. Like my soul started to speak. This is what I would do. This is who I would be. And it was like one of the most emotional moments for me because I'm sitting in this crap cell and I can't actually do what I'm writing, but I'm feeling all of these things about myself, right? Like I want to be the greatest father in the world. That's what I want to do. If I could do anything, that's what I would do. And I started to write, what does that look like? Greatest father in the world has a job that he goes to every day because he loves it. And he teaches his by example his daughter that you can create a life that you love. And so I start like fleshing that out and talking about that. And that led into a feeling or a belief and like back to this model, right? It starts with vision, but it has to be vision that is so powerful that you can feel it. Because once I started feeling my vision, I recognized that there were things that I had to do in order to make that vision become a reality. I couldn't be a dirtbag. I couldn't talk like a dirtbag. I couldn't walk like a dirtbag. I couldn't sag my pants down past my butt crack anymore. You know, I couldn't chop it up with the homies on the block anymore, right? I had to do something different. And so I started thinking, if your daughter was standing right next to you right now in this prison, how would you behave? How would you carry yourself? If you're going to be the greatest dad in the world, you got to freaking stand like it. And so I started to do the things that were attached to the feeling that I got when I was writing about that vision. And you know what happened was people started seeing things different in me, right? They started saying things different about me. Oh, that dude, he's a good dude. He's a good dude. He doesn't cuss. You don't hear a cuss word come out of his mouth. And people would ask me, like, why are you doing that? Why do you think you can be different? Why do you think you can change? And my answer was, I'm the greatest dad in the world. And this is how the greatest dad in the world acts. This is how he behaves. Even when he's in prison, this is how he behaves. I'm not saying that it's easy because it got me in a lot of fights as well. However, it's worth it, right? And it retrains the knowledge pattern, retrains the identity. It allows you to shed off those labels. I didn't feel like a drug addict when I did those things. I didn't feel like a car thief when I was walking around with my head high, when I was behaving like the man that I saw in the vision that I wrote. When I wrote the word vision and I wrote, if you could be anything in your life, what would you be? I felt different. And that knowledge perpetuates and it moves and it moves and it moved me into spaces that I never thought that I would ever sit in.
Wow.
So some really and the reality in all that is that there's nothing special. There's nothing special about me, but there's something special about those principles. There's something special about picking up a pen and writing about what your soul knows about you and allowing that to flow as emotional as it has to be. There's something special about that. And that's the gift that is kind of the essence of what we're trying to do here.
You know, thank you, Josh, for sharing that. Because I mean, you brought goosebumps to me quite a few times during that story, especially when you said if your daughter was standing right next to you, right? That is so powerful to envision that. I mean, extremely powerful. And I mean, I just shared something in the talk that I did Saturday at our Healing Utah Success Summit. And I shared it a few times on the show, and it's not the same like you. However, my daughter said something to me that also, even though I've been on this journey for 14 years, really opened me up and really helped me realize this path that I am on right now is exactly the path I'm supposed to be on. And my daughter knows my past, my oldest daughter. And she called me up probably about a month ago, and I'm at work, and she goes, "Hey, Dad, I got to talk to you about something. You're probably not going to like the first part of it." And I'm thinking, oh my gosh. And both my daughters are grown women, right? They're in their 30s. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I guess I'll sit here and hear what's going to happen. And she goes, "You know, when you started your podcast, Dad, I wanted to do everything I could to support you and support your show, right? Because I really believe it's a great cause. She goes, as time went, I found where I wanted to support your podcast, but I didn't want to support you anymore. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, why? I don't understand. And she goes, every time you started talking about things on your show, you shared very little about you. And you shared a lot about Janan, who is my wife. It's almost like you were playing the victim the whole time. And she goes, now you were a victim, right? But she says it's like you were playing this victim role and just stretching it and stretching it. And she goes, so it got to where I knew your story and I couldn't understand why you were continuing to play this victim. And then she goes, one day I'm in the kitchen and I'm cooking dinner and I see one of your shows and it looked like somebody was interviewing you, which exactly what happened. My friend Robin from the Other Side Academy, our guest didn't show up and she was my guest co-host. So I asked her to interview me. And it's the first time I told my story on air. And she says, Dad, I listened to that show 3 times. And she goes, I even still get emotional to this day thinking about it. She goes, Dad, I am so proud of you. So proud of you for opening up and finally sharing a part of you, right? So here's this guy who lost his job due to a dirty UA back in 2009. I decided I was going to change who I was because I definitely was not the person who Al Richards thought he was. I went on this journey, not even knowing where I'm going to go. I'm opening up every freaking door I possibly can just to see what's on the other side, to see where it leads, see what happens. God kept placing the right people in front of me. And after 14 years, I still was not at a spot I thought I was at. And it's because I didn't think my story mattered. Plus, again, I was keeping it quiet, even though I'm interviewing people who are opening up and being vulnerable and sharing their story. I wasn't even being fair to them, in all honesty, because I wasn't, even though I was being vulnerable and sharing parts, I was not sharing my whole story. So this journey that we go on, right? You got incarcerated, that basically was a blessing for you, I'm guessing, because it changed your life completely and it put you on a whole journey. And me losing my job of 24 years, if it wasn't for me losing my job, I probably would have stayed doing my every Friday and Saturday night cocaine and alcohol. I may not even be here today, or may have ended up being where you had been. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. The fact that all of our stories matter can't be stated enough. Regardless of what it looks like, the story is meant to be told.
Yeah.
And just like your story, I imagine that you telling that story, especially after interviewing as many people as you had interviewed, people get to know you, right?
Yeah.
But they didn't know all of you. And so your daughter was affected. I imagine that a lot more than just your daughter were affected by that, and I think that is a fact that I don't know. I'm speculating, obviously, but I think that that we come to a point in our lives, that each of us come to a point in our lives where we ask ourselves the question: does our story matter? And start to really just allow that thought to ruminate and become identity and become, and it can go one of two ways. A beautiful piece, the My Story Matters curriculum is there's some depth to the build. And if you are you familiar with Joseph Campbell? He wrote the Hero with a Thousand Faces.
No, I've not heard of that one.
You should check him out. He's he's a scholar in anthropology. He's a digger of culture and in world culture and history, and he uncovers the idea of our just the human civilizations need to have a belief system and to pattern ourselves after this hero's journey. And the hero's journey is all about being called on an adventure and organizing yourself with allies and recognizing villains and going through this process um, of character development, coming up against a stressor and overcoming stress with your allies and against your enemies, and developing a resilience that allows you to see the adventure through to the end and become an individual, right? Become a warrior, become whatever it is in whatever culture. And so he unfolds each of these cultures and shapes them out and shows how this belief structure is an inherent part of our journeys as human beings. And the idea that we're all on this hero's journey is a really empowering tool that we can use as we navigate the challenges and the life struggles that we go through. You know, regardless of if it's addiction or if it's the challenge of not feeling not feeling qualified enough for a job, about not feeling like you're enough for your partner, about not whatever it is, the challenges for each of us exist. And within that challenge, when we can dig into the vision, when we can dig into this idea that we're on this journey and that the stress before us is the opportunity to become, it almost gamifies life. And anyway, just a thought I was having as you were talking there.
No, I love that thought, Josh. I mean, thank you for sharing that. So I'd like you to elaborate on this. I say this on the show quite a bit, and I'm a really strong believer of this. And again, this is just me. You know, we set goals in life, and we may reach our goal or two or three or four, however many we set, but we always set another one so we can, do our best to achieve higher.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to bettering yourself as an individual, for me, I like to say there is no finish line, because I really do believe that you could continuously find yourself in a place that you're going, oh my gosh, you're scratching your head going, I never thought of that. And so you work on that, right? I don't think you can set a goal to say, okay, this is the type of person I'm going to be, and you can reach that. However, when it comes to like rebuilding yourself, like I have worked so hard the last 14 years. And in all honesty, Josh, 14 years of doing this, I feel like I've not even hardly scratched the surface. I mean, serious. My wife will tell you he is not the man that I married, in a good way, right? He's a totally different person. I can say that about my wife because of her journey that she's had, right? With her addiction battle and where she's at in life now and what she's doing. But again, I that's a word I'm working on getting rid of, is the but word. I just don't think I've even really hit even a peak yet, to be honest with you. Because I'm looking at the universe, and you mentioned the universe a couple times, how it brings things to you when you're writing it down. There's so much more out there for me to understand, to become a better individual. So if Josh comes to me and he's like, Al, I'm struggling right now and I really need some help. Okay, Josh, what's going on, buddy? What's that? And you start saying something, I'm like, Okay, you know what? No, I'm not a certified therapist. However, these are some tools that I used to help me take the next step, right? And I have really found out myself, when you realize something and you take a next step, it's almost like there's a box that's all wrapped up with the pretty bow on top of it for you to open up, and it tells you exactly which step to take next. And
Mhm.
it seems like
Mhm.
it just keeps going. And I'm also a firm believer, you're never too old to make that change, because I know you would probably agree with this. No one's coming to save us, right? No one's coming to. Now, someone may take out their hand, because that's what you and Amy are doing. You're putting your hand out and saying, "Here, let me help you. Let me just show you some direction." They still have to make that choice, right? And you mentioned that
Right.
earlier.
Yep.
So again, I don't think anyone's too old to ever work on becoming a different person, whether they're 70 or 80 or whatever. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, a couple of things come to mind. So first, just validating everything that that you just said. The the uh, the thing that comes to mind, and kind of the way that I've wrapped that up in a bow, is achievement motivation. Right? We set out to achieve something, and as we achieve it, we become motivated to take the next step. And that's the idea of having this reward that's at the end of this goal. But the reward is a package that you open up, and it shows you what the next step is, right? So you're motivated because there's the reward. And so there's, if we get into the science of the brain, there's dopa a dopaminergic response. And so dopamine drops and it feels good, and we remember that and we love it. And so then we go back to the same thing that we did in order to get it, which is set another goal. And we use what's in that box to shape it out. And so we're motivated, right? And then we go on to the next, and we achieve and we motivate. We achieve, we achievement motivation. And and that's a beautiful thing. And I 100% believe that that is a principle of life. We set goals, we set out to achieve them, and when we do, we're motivated to keep going. The other thing that comes to mind is that our uh, our our context for setting goals is defined and really shaped out by um, the 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 understanding that we have of life in the moment that we set the goal, right? And so, like, to illustrate that, when I was sitting in prison, I'm like, I want to have a job that I love, so I can teach my daughter through my example that you can love what you do for work. The context that I had was like, this is what I'd done for the last 10 years. I'd been a heroin addict, right? But in my heart, I wanted to be able to teach people that they had a responsibility to their body, and there's choice and consequence. And we could destroy our bodies with drugs, or we could build our bodies with nutrition and with exercise and with understanding what sunlight and sleep and all these things do for us. And that's what I wanted to do. And the only word that I had for that was personal trainer, right? And so I write that down in my vision because that's what I see in that moment. But as I, work through doing all the things, and I get my personal trainer certificate when I get out of prison, I'm like, dude, that's not the end. Because what I learned on the path to becoming a personal trainer, my context for understanding what I really want grows. And with that growth, my vision for where I'm going grows. And so I think that, what you're saying is 100% true. Like, you've only scratched the surface, because but that's not what you think when you set out to get it. It's not what I thought when I set out to be a personal trainer. I thought that was the end game. But once I became a personal trainer, I had like this, like the world had opened up to me, and I saw and felt things differently. And I learned about what a structural therapist is, and I learned about what a wellness coach is, and I learned about what a life coach is. And like, I started to dig into these other skill sets And those skill sets drew me in. And because I had achieved the personal trainer thing, I was motivated to do more because I felt like I just scratched the surface. And so then you move on, right? And um, today, by the grace of God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, I sit in an office that is not a personal trainer office. It's a I'm a corporate director at a venture capital firm, and how did that happen? I don't know. I can look back and retrospectively, I can tell you how that happened, but 10 years ago, when I started shaping that out, I could not have told you all the steps that it took to get here. It took just going to the next, just going to the next. And even today, I know that this is not the end. I feel the same as you, Al. I feel like just scratching the surface, right? Anyway, so those are a few of my thoughts about that. I definitely resonate with what you're saying. There's an opportunity for each of us to just embark on this journey of goal setting and goal achieving. And we at Safe Harbors, we call it vision creating, and we call it dream work, and we call it self actualization. And the terms are different, but the idea and the principle is the same, right? Like what we're doing is we're seeing us as the potential and not as the past, and not even as the guy sitting in the seat writing the thing. We see the potential. I see the potential of me, and that potential of me pulls me toward it.
Yeah. At the end of my talk Saturday, I have this declaration. I do my best to read it every single morning, and sometimes I get caught up with different things in the morning while I'm getting ready to go to the gym. There's three things in there that I do say, though, and I said this at my speech on my talk. I am not my mistakes. I am not my failures. And I am not my past. I am who I choose to be today. And that's an amazing individual who loves and cares for others. And I know those two words, the I am, are two very, very powerful words. And I've also said many times, the words that follow I am follow you, right? Because it's
I
true.
love that.
The words
Yeah.
that follow I am follow you. And I used to tell my wife this when she'd go to AA meetings, and I'd go there to support her. And what happens in AA meetings, and a lot of them, not all of them, but they get up and say, "Hi, I'm Al, and I'm an addict." Well, I
Yeah.
just labeled myself as an addict, even though I've not used in who knows how long. So really, am I an addict? Not today. So why am I labeling myself as an addict? And
Yep.
and now she gets up and now she says, "Hi, I'm Janan, and I'm in recovery." So she's completely changed the wording on it. And she's not labeled herself as that addict. Yes, she's saying I'm in recovery. I think even a couple times she says, "Hi, I'm Janan, and I'm in long-term recovery." So she's given herself that space, right? So yeah, I just think it's important, and it sounds like this is exactly what you guys do. You're just teaching people how to change their language, change how they vision things, change how they look at themselves.
Hmm.
And I believe you even said it earlier. It doesn't happen overnight. It's that journey, and they tell you that in recovery too, right? It's don't don't think what is it? Don't think about the process, just think about the journey, because you're going to get a lot more out of the journey. And what I have learned just in the last 14 years, my buddy Nicholas Smith, who is the author of The Giant and the Smalls, he has a Facebook, him and Ryan, that's called A Tribe of Giants. So many individuals from all over the world follow these guys. And you even talked about it, not in this sense though, but he's like, "Al, if you look at your life and you start connecting the dots backwards, you'll see you're exactly where you're supposed to be this very moment. We miss that, right? We miss those steps, and till we do actually stop and connect those dots backwards, because every little dot that we stepped on to get to where the dot we're stepping on today put us exactly where we're at today. And that's in a better place, with a better life and a better outlook on life. Anyway, just something I wanted to throw out there and share. Yeah.
No, I love that, and it speaks to a couple of things that you said. So the first thing that you said alludes to what we were talking about before we started recording, which was, when you were telling me about when you're digging into the journey and the mission of the other side of addiction, and you said, "Who's to say how long recovery is?" Right? Like who can put a stamp on 30-day program, 60-day program, and say you're healed after that? It's a journey, and the journey is exactly what it's supposed to be. And the other thing that resonated, and what I thought about, as you're talking about owning this story and owning this identity, and is that words matter, and the words that we use, that we associate with who we are, with our character and what we're about, they put us where we're going, right? Like I love that statement. I hope that you'll allow me to quote you on that statement. The words that follow I am follow you.
Yeah.
They 100% do. And so from the moment that words are developing in our mind, and that we talk about this a lot, from the moment those words are developing in the mind about the identity and about the direction, it is so important that we're intentional with how we allow the stage of vision to play out, and the words that are tied into that. Intentionality becomes everything about where we end up, and so vitally important for us to recognize that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. And it's crazy because I had totally forgot that I had mentioned that on a couple podcasts. And then we actually had a guest co-host, a good friend of mine by the name of Janessa. And she was actually on the show as a guest co-host. And we were interviewing someone, and she goes, "Al, one thing that you put on Facebook once that has always stuck with me." And it said, "The words that follow I am follow you." And I was like, oh my gosh, I completely forgot that I said that. And I've really done my best to stick it in my head right now, because again, it is so powerful.
Mhm.
It's very true. My gosh, Josh, we have been going like an hour already. It goes by so flipping fast, and we do our best to keep these
As
shows right around an hour. I'd love to have you come on as a guest and just share your personal story if you would like to. I'd like to get you scheduled and come on one of our Thursday shows and just share a little bit more about your own personal journey. And you shared a little bit today of what happened. It sounds like Amy was kind of like an angel that popped into your life, right? And you guys just connected. It was meant to happen, and you've gotten on this other path, and now you're out there helping so many other people. And I hope you don't take any disrespect on this or take it in the wrong way. I look at people like yourself, Josh. It's, to me, it's almost like, and I'm not talking about this in a religious way, I'm talking in a spiritual way. It's like you're Jesus's disciples, right? He picks the imperfect ones to go out and share a message. And so many of us and so many people that we've had on our show who have been incarcerated, I've interviewed I don't know how many, and to see who they are today and see what they are doing to help other individuals, help them take that first step, even if it's just a baby step, but as long as it's forward. To me, they're making their past, it matters, but it doesn't matter, because it matters because it put them who they are today. It doesn't matter because, again, it's their past, right? And here in the United States, we like to hold people's past over their head, especially in the legal system. They love holding that title above your head throughout the rest of your life. And it's something else that I think needs to change, especially here in the United States. Once you do your time, whatever, that slate needs to be wiped clean to give people an opportunity to get their lives back going in the right direction, instead of having that label over them to where it pushes them right back into a society that they have worked their butts off to get out of. Because why not go back to something you know and you're comfortable with, because no one else is going to give you the opportunity, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And the system is the system struggles to make ends meet for the individuals that are trying to make ends meet, and
Yeah.
it makes it really difficult. I think I would love it, Al. I'd love to come on and be a guest again. I think that there's a lot more that we can talk about. A few things came to mind there, and I would love to share my own personal story. Definitely no disrespect taken. I feel I feel a calling, and I feel a need to show up for individuals who are having a hard time showing up for themselves, and to be able to just allow them to initiate that permission, and to be able to look at themselves in a way that honors their past, and sees that their past can create a beautiful future, and it doesn't have to damn them for the rest of their lives. I would love to just expand on that, what that road looked like for me, and to your point about the justice involved in moving forward, I'd love to bust into that a little bit. We're doing some really fun things with some game changers in the state of Utah, and we're really excited about the opportunity to move some of this empowering language and this empowering communication into the spaces where it needs to be in a more profound way, infrastructurally. And I'd love to dig into our efforts there and the challenges that we're facing, and maybe kind of expose some realities, and at the same time expose some possibilities. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, definitely. Well, we will definitely get in touch with one another.
Okay.
I'll shoot you an email and we'll get something figured out. And how how can our listeners find you? Let's say whether it's themselves or somebody that they know, how do they find what you guys are doing? How can they contact you?
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Thank you. If they just, the one-stop shop for them, just mystorymatters.org.
Okay.
And there's, I talked a little bit about the different tracks and curriculums that we have available, and they can dig in. We have online curriculum that's available, and there's some contact us, and I'm open to speak and work with individuals, and help them get into the to the headspace and the heart space that they need to be in to take that next step. So yeah, we'd love to have people show up on the site and get in contact with us.
Okay. That sounds good. Well, Josh, again, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. And hopefully here in the near future, we'll be able to meet in person, and I'd love to meet Amy. I think I did already meet Amy once, and I believe we met at Recovery Day, but I'm not 100% sure. I've gotten myself out there so much in the recovery community that I'm meeting so many flipping people. I'm starting to lose track, right? Yeah, people come up to me, they'll start talking to me, and it's like, okay, I know you. I just cannot remember where from. However, I love the heck out of it. I mean, I really,
Yeah.
really do. I would have never ever thought I'd be in this position 2 years ago, and here it is. Our podcast has been going for well over 2 years, 150 something episodes or more out there. And yeah, I get to be inspired weekly weekly because of people like yourself and our other guests that come on the show. So thank you so much for your time.
Hey, it's been a pleasure. You must be doing something right, Al, because connection and communication, that's what it's all about. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here and look forward to doing it again soon.
Okay. All right, buddy. Well, stay with us. And yeah, you and I will chat as soon as we come off here real quick. But hey, guys, just want to say thank you to all our listeners, all our guest co-hosts, our sponsors, Resilience Talk Network. Guys, man, we couldn't do this without you. And we have so many supporters. And since this is live and it's coming out, while I have the opportunity, I just want to say thank you for everyone who showed up at our Healing Utah Success Summit this past Saturday over at the Miller Free Enterprise Building. Man, the feedback we have been getting from this show, guys, you've warmed our hearts. I mean, seriously, we've already got people asking when our next one is going to be. So thank you so much for your love and kindness. And guys, keep watching us, and please share this video. If you know someone that could use their help here at mystorymatters.org, please reach out to these guys and please share it. We love y'all. Thank you.